Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore topics of interest to caregivers. We do this to support and engage chosen family, friends, and neighbors who are caring for someone. I'm Susan Pullian, and I've been a volunteer with the Ontario Caregiver Organization for over 5 years now. I'm also a caregiver myself and a lifelong learner, and I'm very pleased to be your moderator for today. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the lands we are on today. While we meet on a virtual platform, I want to acknowledge the importance of the land which we call home. I'm joining you today from Milton, Ontario, which is part of the Treaty Lands and Territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. If you'd like to learn more about the lands that you are joining from, you can learn more at native-land.ca. As mentioned, our webinar today is called Ease the Journey, Advanced Care Planning Tips for Caregivers. 93% of Canadians believe it's important to talk about their wishes for their care with family and friends, yet only 1 in 5 has a plan, according to the 2021 ACP Canada National Poll. As a caregiver, knowing what matters most to your care recipient can help you honor their wishes and give you peace of mind if they become too sick to make decisions. But when is the right time to start these conversations? And how do you approach the subject? Are there tools and resources to guide you through the process? In today's informative session, the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association will explain what Advanced Care Planning, or ACP, is and provide you with practical tools and tips to support your care recipient with confidence. Our speaker today is Karen Dietrich, who is the Director of Programs at the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association. She joined after serving as Vice President, Public Engagement and Knowledge Mobilization at Volunteer Canada, following a long-standing role as National Priority Advisor at the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction. She has worked in the nonprofit sector for over 15 years, leveraging her skills in partnership development, strategic planning, and communications to tackle complex social challenges. Karen has held several volunteer positions, including Partnerships and Sponsorships Lead for Hacking Health Ottawa and Vice President for the Gloucester Recreation Development Organization. She has a BA in Criminology from Carleton University and a professional certificate in Partnership Management from the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs. Welcome, Karen, and thank you so much for joining us. I will pass over the mic to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you to the Ontario Caregiver Organization for inviting me here today. And thanks to everyone who's taken some time out of their very busy schedules for this session. I am joining from the unceded territory of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe Nation, also known as Ottawa. I see we've got a few folks from that region in the call today. So today we are going to talk about advanced care planning, and we're going to cover a few short sections. So we'll do a basic background and introduction about the initiative and my organization. We'll do a deep dive into the advanced care planning process. So we have 5 key components of the process, and I'll cover those in some detail. Then I want to spend some time on supported decision making. This is a concept that is foundational to advanced care planning, and I think it's very important, in particular for caregivers, to really understand how they can support their care recipients throughout the advanced care planning journey. And then I'll highlight some of the guides and resources that were used in the making of this presentation, but that you can also access on your own after the session. So, who is the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association? We are the national voice for hospice palliative care in Canada, and we work in partnership with provincial hospice palliative care associations like Hospice Palliative Care Ontario, other national organizations and international groups, and we focus on advocacy for equitable access to hospice palliative care, public policy, and a lot of public education and awareness, which really is where the Advanced Care Planning in Canada initiative falls within our work. We've been running this program since 2008, and I can tell you that advanced care planning has changed quite a bit since that time. We are lucky enough to benefit from the knowledge, lived experience, and expertise of folks from across Canada to inform a national pan-Canadian framework that ensures that we're always grounded in the latest evidence and voices from diverse stakeholders across the country. And the last one was updated in 2020. So a real shift took place where we've anchored advanced care planning into what I would call life planning. So, in the past, when advanced care planning started, it really was planning for end of life care. And what we've learned over the years is that generally people wait too long. So, advanced care planning is for any age and any stage of health. So, when people say, well, who should do this? I say everyone. And typically, what we find is more women participate in advanced care planning than men. We also find that usually in late 40s, early 50s is when it typically begins. We're in the process of trying to normalize these conversations so that it becomes as common as retirement planning and other elements of life planning. We do polls, we do campaigns every year, and we help to develop tools to help facilitate those conversations. And we participate in sessions like this to help raise awareness about this program, about available resources, and to help spread the word about what this is, why it's so important, and how people can get started. So advanced care planning is really, it's a process. It's about thinking, reflecting, and communicating the kind of health or personal care that someone might want if ever they found themselves unable to express themselves. This could be sudden due to an accident and somebody is unconscious. It could be due to an illness. It could be due to a variety of factors. And that ability to express oneself might come and go over time. So it's not a set, now you switch into this and now you don't. So this really is an early process where the more we can have these conversations, the more we can participate as in advanced care planning as part of our care circle, the more prepared we will be to support one another and ensure that folks are getting the care that they would want. During these conversations, there is an invitation to talk about your values, your wishes, your preferences, so that people understand what's important to you. So, as I've said in the past, advanced care planning evolved from 2008 to now. And advanced care planning used to be very procedure focused. Do you want A or do you want B? If something happens, would you like to be resuscitated or not? If something happens, would you like this or would you like that? Given that we've shifted this whole conversation upstream earlier when when we're all well, when our health is good, or maybe in the early parts of an illness or diagnosis, this is what we're trying to do. We've really anchored these conversations in these values, wishes, and beliefs. Because if you know what's important to your care recipient, you are more likely to be able to make a decision about a healthcare procedure that aligns with those values, beliefs, and wishes. ACP is important because it recognizes and it reflects that every person's wishes and preferences are unique to themselves and they change over time. So it provides a framework and a process for us to be able to bring that to life and keep it front and center as we're faced with some challenging situations. It has been found to reduce distress, anxiety, and uncertainty for care recipients, their caregivers, and healthcare providers. Often decisions are being made in times of extreme stress. Sometimes they need to be done very quickly. Sometimes you might be making these decisions from afar because you can't get to the facility or you can't get to where it is in time. And so by having these advanced care planning conversations, this can significantly reduce that very emotional time in our lives. And it recognizes that these preferences can change. And so we call it advanced care planning process for a reason. It's not you do it once, the conversation's been had and you're done. So just like your financial plan, you wouldn't make your financial plan, when you turn 30 and then never revisit it again, right? So that is what we mean by integrating this as part of life planning. So I'm going to read a story. And so feel free to stand up, feel free to close your eyes. It's a bit of a longer story, but I find it's really helpful to help illustrate just one perspective around advanced care planning and what it did for Lucas. So Lucas had always been a man of action. As a firefighter, he thrived in moments of urgency, making split-second decisions that saved lives. He was strong, fearless, and dedicated to protecting those around him. But nothing in his years of service could have prepared him for the day he sat in a doctor's office and heard the words, "You have ALS." The diagnosis was a devastating blow. ALS is a progressive disease that weakens muscles and gradually takes away the ability to move, speak, and even breathe. Lucas had always been the one people turned to in times of crisis, but now he was faced with a battle that he couldn't fight alone. At first, Lucas resisted the idea of advanced care planning. It felt like surrender, like admitting defeat. But as his symptoms progressed, he saw the impact his silence had on his wife, Simone, and their 4 children. They were terrified, unsure of how to help him, uncertain of what he wanted. This once fearless man who had led his family with unwavering strength now saw fear in their eyes. One evening, after struggling to button his shirt, Lucas finally spoke. "Simone, we need to talk about what's coming. I don't want you to have to guess about what I want." Simone nodded, holding back tears. She'd been waiting for this moment, unsure of how to bring it up without breaking his spirit. So together they sat down with an advanced care planning guide, and Lucas began outlining his wishes. They began by defining his priorities. This included remaining at home for as long as possible, not wanting to be put on a ventilator, and ensuring his family had access to supports. As Lucas's condition worsened, the document they created became more than just a plan. It was a source of strength for his family. Lucas could no longer walk. When Lucas could no longer walk, they adjusted their home to accommodate his wheelchair, knowing it aligned with his wish to stay home as long as possible. When swallowing became difficult, they transitioned to soft foods and feeding assistance. And when the day came that his breathing became too labored, Simone held his hand, knowing he was ready. There was no panic, there was no uncertainty, just love, respect, and the quiet strength that had defined Lucas's entire life. Lucas's story is not just about ALS. It's about the power of choice, of love, and of ensuring in the hardest moments that families are not left guessing. Advanced care planning gave Lucas the ability to make decisions about his care, and it gave Simone and their children peace, knowing they honored his wishes. And it allowed Lucas to face his journey on his own terms, with dignity, clarity, and love. That is the essence of advanced care planning. And it's an illustration of how this process not only supports the care recipient, but supports you as a caregiver. It also really, really assists with the healthcare staff who are also faced with tremendous grief and challenges around supporting families time and time again. So, what is this thing? How does it work? How can you get started? The Advanced Care Planning Journey, or ACP journey, includes 5 core components. You can start wherever feels right for you. So this is for your care recipient. The ACP journey is anchored in the individual for whom this plan is for. So think about what's important to you, learn about the care that you want, choose your decision makers, share your wishes and preferences, and then record those somewhere. So we'll go through this process, and the Advanced Care Planning Guide follows this exact journey as well. So it begins with thinking about what's important to you. Values are the things that you believe deeply, and wishes would be the things that you desire for yourself. So, as a caregiver, how can you support your care recipient? What types of questions might you have? This can get really squishy, for lack of a better word. Values, wishes, beliefs, they feel a little nebulous. And sometimes do I have to know the treatment decisions? Some of the examples that we provide, some of the stories you'll hear about advanced care planning will be very specific to a particular disease trajectory. That can be really helpful information. If you're having this earlier, it's not going to be so specific. And that's something that will change and evolve over time. So that as you have these conversations about your values and your wishes and your beliefs, you'll start to be able to tie things more specifically to a healthcare decision, or if all of a sudden something happens, you'll have that to anchor those decisions. So, how might we help to identify some of those? A very common question is, what does a good day look like? So that's the other misconception that advanced care planning is all about death, dying, and illness. Yes, you have to have those conversations, but you don't need to start there. You can start with, what does a good day look like? Who do you like to spend your time with? What or who does your care recipient turn to when things are hard? This will help you start to identify your support network. Do they have any spiritual or religious beliefs or cultural traditions? Those can be really important in anchoring these decisions that you may find yourself one day making on their behalf. How much do they want to know? So this is one that, so for those of you who might be familiar with the waiting room revolution, it is a wonderful, it's a podcast, there's a book, but they really talk about developing your group, right? And understanding who wants to know what. So maybe your care recipient doesn't want the details, but you do, or vice versa, or a member of, someone in your family might really want to know every single thing. So, having the conversation to understand that so that everybody involved gets the level of information that they want can really be a helpful place. Privacy. Some people don't want other people to know what's going on, or they want select people to know. So, think about that. Who are we telling? As a caregiver, who do you need? Who do you need to support you? So, if your care recipient is adamant that they don't want anybody to know, take this opportunity to say that you need support, that for you, you need a trusted confidant that you can share some of this information with, if in fact that's what you need. So have that conversation about privacy, both for the care recipient, but also for yourself, because being able to talk about this can be really important to your own well-being. And are they comfortable asking for help? I would also say, are you comfortable asking for help? So you can see how this is really about a dialogue and about communication. So, thinking about what's important to you. This may be a great place to start for you. This may be the hardest place for you to start, depending on what do your day-to-day engagements look like. Um, some of the tips and stories we've heard of ways that folks start these conversations, and we've had it both ways. So sometimes the care recipient really wants to have this conversation, but the caregiver doesn't, or the caregiver really wants to have these conversations, but the care recipient doesn't. We've seen that with families, children, and parents where, some really want to have it and they're, oh my God, I don't want to talk about this. So opportunities might present themselves in the news. So sometimes you can anchor it in a story that's really getting a lot of traction. We saw a lot of advanced care planning conversations taking place during COVID because it was everywhere. Not knowing, uncertainty, healthcare systems, isolation, it made it okay to talk about this because it was part of what we would talk about. But that's not really normalized in society. I think that's shifting, and we're hearing that there is an appetite for that to shift. But lean into that, lean into opportunities where, maybe there's a movie you're watching together. It can help to prompt some of these conversations. Or maybe a friend or family member went through something and you go, oh my God, I really don't want it to go like that. Or I really do want it to go like that. So sometimes it's going to be those small little moments that are going to help you to think about, what might this mean for my care recipient or vice versa. The next kind of component or one of the components is learn about the care you want. Some people start here. So if your care recipient has been, recently diagnosed, I think it's very normal. People lean in, they want to know everything they can about it or not. But this is an opportunity to learn about the care that one might want. If you're early or if you're healthy, it might be more generic. It might be more focused on family history, right? What do you know about your family history? What decisions might you need to be prepared for? What types of screening might you kind of want to make sure that you're getting so that you can be as prepared as possible? But what do people know about the illness? This one is really, really important. That illness trajectory that I talked about is basically, it's not every single situation, but like healthcare providers know a lot about general stages, let's say. of the progression of an illness. And sharing that information and understanding what that is, it's not specific, it won't have specific timelines for you, but it can give you a sense of, what's ahead and how can we prepare for it? Or where do we think we are in that journey? And so really understanding that can help you understand the types of decisions that you might be faced with making. At some point, you'll probably be looking at different treatment decisions. So this may start to get further down the road, but think about, again, those values and those beliefs and how that might impact that. What supports and services are available for you and your care recipient? So thinking about those treatment decisions, thinking about, maybe they're going to be less mobile. Maybe their ability to communicate is going to change over time. How can we adapt to that? And if they want to stay home, have a realistic conversation about what is that going to look like? Can we do that where we are? How much is that going to cost? What might be the community support services who are available to help us? And, you're already connected with a great organization that can help you learn about those different supports and services. So learning is not just about the illness, it's about the different supports and services that might be important as you learn more about it and take that journey with your care recipient. Choose. Choose your decision maker. So your decision maker is going to be, so you may be the decision maker for your care recipient. This is often when people hear advanced care planning, this is often what they think it is. They think it is choosing your power of attorney for personal care. So in Ontario, your power of attorney for personal care is the individual that you choose to make healthcare decisions for you if ever you are unable to. If all you do or all your care recipient does is choose this person, but they never have a conversation with them about what they want, about what's important to them, if you are your care recipient's decision maker, but you don't know what they want, or you're both making assumptions about what they would want to happen, that can be very challenging. So it's really important to think about this as a process. This is an important part in the process, but it's one part of the process because if you don't have the communication, one, let's say that you are the decision maker for your care recipient. You're going to need support. And the more people who know what your care recipient wants, the more you can be supported and they can be supported to get that care. There's also a default list. So if you don't know or you're not sure, do I have to fill out a legal form? There is a default list in Ontario of who that would be. So you might look at that default list and go, "Yep, that works for me. That's great." But some folks don't know that you have that choice. So having that conversation is really important. And then thinking about who would actually make a good decision maker. So as a caregiver, you're already taking on so much. Are you the best person to be the decision maker? Do you qualify to be the decision maker? Do you want to do it on your own? Do you want to do it with others? Things to consider is would you, who do they trust to make their healthcare decisions? So if you're having a conversation as a caregiver with your care recipient, who do they trust, right? Who do they trust to make these decisions on their behalf? Who's a good communicator? Who can understand, who can listen, and who can clearly communicate those wishes, not only to the healthcare team, but to others in your network? Because people are going to want to know. And there's going to be some difficult decisions to be made during stressful times. So sometimes just thinking, oh, of course, it'll be my oldest child, or it'll be my spouse, or maybe that's not the right person. It really can also help to reduce that stress and anxiety when those decisions come up. If people know who is the decision maker or the decision makers, because it can be more than one person, and asking for that support. So the more people know, the better. And you have your care recipient has the ability to choose who this is, and you, as a caregiver, have the ability to decline that role. That is your right. If you're already doing too much and it's just, it's beyond your capacity, work with your care recipient. Identify maybe there's somebody you can do it with. And if your care recipient chooses a lot of people, also be careful of that because now they all have to agree. You all have to agree on the decision that's going to be made. There's no right or wrong way, but that's where the conversations and the communication are so critical to this process. Share, communication. So again, this is the sharing part. So if you just have, if you are told, imagine that, someone says, "Hey, by the way, you're my person, you're my decision maker. Thanks, have a nice day." Decision maker for what? What are we talking about? What do you know about your illness? Who's your healthcare provider? Where do I find that information? So that's where these conversations are really important. And that thinking step right at the beginning, that can be through reflection, that can be on one's own. Sharing your wishes, sharing your preferences, this is the step where there's that constant communication. When everyone knows, we can support and honor our care recipients' choices best. This can be in a quiet, comfortable place. So it can be pre-scheduled. It can be at a coffee shop. It can be where on a walk. It can be wherever your care recipient feels most comfortable or where you feel more comfortable if you're the one prompting this. If you're the one saying, listen, I need some help. I need some guidance. I don't want to be left on my own making these choices for you. Am I even the person who's making these choices for you? Give yourself time. It doesn't need to be one conversation where you cover everything. If you decide to maybe start with the sharing and supporting of the sharing, you could start and say, "Hey, I went to this webinar today. They were talking about this thing called advanced care planning. Have you ever heard of it? Do you know what it is? Because I think it could be really helpful." That could be your first conversation. It's just, yeah, well, here's the slide deck, or here's the website, or whatever it might be. You can bring notes, you can bring the guide. So if this is not your first step and you're going through the other steps, you can bring your notes with you to make you feel more comfortable. And like it says there, plan to meet more than once. This isn't going to be something where you sit down and get all the answers. You're probably going to have a lot of questions come up as you're having these conversations. And that is great. That means that you're going to take steps and that you have more information to learn more about what to do next time. And then we talk about recording. So recording your preferences and recording your decision makers. So if you do use a guide, whatever that guide might be, could be the Advanced Care Planning Canada guide, could be the Advanced Care Planning Ontario guide from Hospice Palliative Care Ontario. I'll show those in a second. Um, it's helpful to write things down. If you have a power of attorney for personal care, so this is a document that is legally binding, then keep that together with your plan. Maybe you have a will. So think about where all of these things are. But the component for advanced care planning is you can record this in a video. You can record this in an audio file. You can share this as a story with your loved ones. You can share your wishes, your values, your beliefs, information about who you trust, all of these things we've been talking about. You can share that in whatever way you feel comfortable. There's no right or wrong way. A lot of people are like, but is it legally binding? The legal component to this, which is a huge barrier of people not participating in advanced care planning, it's the power of attorney for personal care. So in Ontario, that's what it's called. If you are supporting loved ones in other parts of the country, it might be called something else. So it might be called a proxy or a representative. Many of these forms you can fill out on your own with a witness. So please do not let the fear of the legal component stop you from participating in this process. Record the information, make sure people know where to find that information. And if it's password protected, like you use your finger to open your laptop or your phone, and that's where all your files are, just make sure that there's a copy somewhere that a few folks have that you trust that is not password protected, or if it's in a lockbox or a physical place, that they're able to access that information. And lastly, it's not in our little circle picture, but review. So I've talked about this as a process. I've talked about this as something that you kind of come and go. So it's because it's a process, the review step is built in. So that is advanced care planning generally. and the key components to it. You're thinking, you're learning, you're sharing, you're choosing, you're recording. You may find yourself entering the advanced care planning process from any of these steps. So prior to working where I am now, I actually entered through the record stage. Nope, I'm lying. I entered through the choose stage because I had purchased my first home. And when I made my will, my lawyer said, hey, you should really set up a power of attorney for personal care. And I went, what is that? And that's where I started to learn about advanced care planning. So I want to now turn our attention to a concept called supported decision making. What is this? So, supported decision making is just helping people to make decisions, supporting them in whatever form that might need to be. And we all turn to the people most important to us when we're facing difficult decisions. So this ensures that our conversations are open and that if we need support in communicating, that we factor that in. It's a very person-centered approach and it's ensuring that the voice of the person you're supporting is at the center. So what are some principles around this just to help kind of bring it to life? So these are some general things that can help if you're not sure, if things are feeling overwhelming. Breaking things down to one decision at a time is a way to support someone in making a decision. Sometimes it feels so overwhelming and it's like, well, do you want this or do you want that? Or how about this? So breaking things down can really help that happen. Making sure that the right people are involved. So if you know your care recipient and you understand maybe they communicate differently, maybe they're nonverbal, you're going to need to make sure that someone is there with your care recipient, be that you or someone else, who's able to facilitate that communication. So those people might be professionals, they might be volunteers, they might be part of your support network, family, friends. But thinking about that in terms of when decisions need to be made, are these supports available to your care recipient at that time? Remember that it's up to your care recipient. And so capacity is something that comes up quite a bit, right? Well, how do I know if they have capacity to make decisions? And depending on different illnesses, capacity can fluctuate. And so the supported decision-making approach starts by assuming that our care recipients have the capacity and recognizing that that capacity can change over time. It also recognizes that they can change their minds. Just because they thought something at one point doesn't mean that they can't change their mind as new information becomes available. Understand the right assistance and explore different options. So I think one of the easiest ways to think about this is my husband is German. If he spoke German to me, I would not be able to understand what he was asking. I would not be able to make a decision because I couldn't process or understand the information. If I had a translator, I am now able to participate in that conversation. I had the capacity the whole time. I didn't have the right support or tool to help me to engage in that conversation. So I'd like to tell another story about Paula. So I actually met Paula at a conference in Alberta 2 years ago, and she generously shared this story with us. So my name is Paula, and I recently accompanied my big sister Lindsay through her ovarian cancer experience. Lindsay was 57 when she died this spring, and she was also autistic. I'm proud of the fact that Lindsay made all of her own medical decisions right until her last day, and that she died in peace, comfort, and with me by her side. It comforts me that in the end, she was in charge. We were all on Team Lindsay, and that when medical information was presented to her in a quiet, calm, and supported environment, not only could she understand what was being conveyed, but she asked intelligent questions and again, crucially, made her own decisions about medications, end of life care, even who she wanted to be around her, and how she wanted to be treated in her last months. To see her blossom like that was a gift, of course, to her, but also to me as her loved one. My job was to walk beside her, help her if she needed it, and defend her right to make her own decisions at every step. Autistic people, no matter what their level of support needs, can and should be full participants in their own medical decisions. I encourage us all to remember Lindsay's story and use advanced care planning as an act of equity and protection for the most vulnerable of Canadians. So, over the past 2, 3 years, Advanced Care Planning Canada has been on a journey of accessibility, of ensuring that everybody is able to participate in the advanced care planning journey itself. And Paula's story and Lindsay's story is a great example of how we can do this if we are intentional and we apply a supported decision-making lens for as long as possible, for as often as possible. So I've talked about these different resources. All of these resources are available for free at advancedcareplanning.ca. This is what the website looks like when you go there. You see a purple Start Planning button towards the top right. That will give you access to the guides. You can also go into Tools and Resources, and that will give you access to the guides. And the reason I say guides is because we have different versions of them based on your need and your preference. So the foundational guide is called My Advanced Care Planning Guide. It is an in-depth overview of advanced care planning, so it covers a lot of what I have just presented to you here. But if you want to go into more detail, it talks about the background, what it is, why it's important, and then it's broken out into different sections. And in each section, you have different activities. So it might be what's important to me or what matters to me for my care. So some of those prompting questions that I gave as examples before can be found in this guide. There are stories like the ones that I've read weaved throughout the guide to help bring it to life. And it can walk you through all these different steps. You can print it out, you can do it as a PDF online and fill it out. You can participate in the digital version where you create an account and you can go in, log out as often as you want, and then share it with loved ones. So it really is meant to be used how and when you want to use it and has a lot of different activities and is quite interactive. For some folks, they find that too much. So maybe as a care recipient, you're just going, this is great. Maybe you actually want to start with the advanced care planning guide, the full guide, and read through it and think about it, and then just take little sections and say, hey, I'd like to try this. Or maybe you want to do it for yourself and then share that experience with your care recipient about how you found that to be helpful or things that you want them to know. The exact same information is also available in what we call the mini guide. The mini guide is fewer pages. It has all the same information, but compressed. So it's really helpful if, let's say, you're starting to review things, right? So then you just want cues, you just want to remember, you want a few tips, maybe not as in depth, or if you're just feeling like you're getting pushback and you're trying to engage in these conversations with your care recipient, this one might be a little less overwhelming. And lastly, we have an easy read version. So this again is to accommodate different learning styles. This uses plain language, much more white space, a lot of icons, and it uses different visual cues to help to communicate. It can be completed by drawing, or we have little icons that you can print out and cut and you can stick in the book. So it has more flexibility in terms of your communication style or the communication style of your care recipient and is much more flexible that way. Many people start with this one. So these are all covering the same information. They're just doing it in different ways. And then lastly, we have the Advanced Care Planning Canada card game. So you can print this off at home. There's kind of a what you see on the left of the screen. I'm going to call it it's the game board. So you put that down. You can just write out whatever you want. You don't need it, but the idea is that you just have what matters to me. And then there's about 30 or so, I think 36 different cards. So you see you would pick a card and say being with friends. Is that very important, important, or not important, and why? Right? Being with pets, travel, going to work, independence. So the card game covers a whole bunch of different things, and there's 6 blank cards in the game, so you can create your own. So these are just some of the tools that are available to you to start those conversations, to start the planning, to start learning. In Ontario, Hospice Palliative Care Ontario, we work, as I said, very closely with them. They have their own website, covers the same five components. It might say decide instead of choose. It might, the words might be a little bit different, but we're all working together under that pan-Canadian framework. I would say one of the great resources that is very specific or relevant to this group would be the section on substitute decision makers. So if you're wondering, so this is the decision maker, if you're wondering, well, what is the hierarchy? What does that look like? Because it's different across all of Canada and we have a national guide, we have information on that on our website. You can go and look at ACP across Canada. You can also go to Advanced Care Planning Ontario and go right into that. And they have fabulous information as well. You can also use their guide. There is not one size fits all. Use what is most relevant to you, what you find most helpful in having these conversations. And I would say, please remember the platinum rule. So, most of us are familiar with the golden rule: treat people as we would want to be treated. The platinum rule invites us to treat people as they would want to be treated. And as a caregiver, that's your role within the advanced care planning journey, is to understand that, to confirm it through conversation, and to do your best to try to support it within reason and within capacity. So be kind and gentle to yourself as well, because sometimes what we want, it's not possible, but we can do our best to try to bring that to life for those that we care about. So thank you so much. I think I've left enough time for some questions. There's information here if you would like to learn more about Advanced Care Planning Canada, if you would like to contact us, or learn more about the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association. So with that, I will stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you, Karen, so much. That was incredibly informative, and you covered a lot of tough topics that I'm sure a lot of caregivers on the call will kind of appreciate and are probably going through them themselves. And so, thank you again very much for all the information and the resources that have been shared in the chat. So we do have time for Q&A, and we have had questions coming in as you've been presenting. So I do have a couple that I can start with you, Karen, and thank you to everybody for posting questions and continue to include them in the chat, and I'll keep monitoring. Um, One of the first questions we have is, can you complete an advanced care plan without having a power of attorney in place?
Yes. The short
Okay.
answer is yes.
Okay.
Um, yeah, the only caveat I would make to that is just review the hierarchy for the substitute decision maker in Ontario.
Right.
So I would say yes, you can do your planning, you can have your conversations, but what you don't want to have is a surprise when it comes time to decision making and find out that whoever your care recipient wants to be making those decisions isn't making those decisions.
Right. Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Just a lot of different details, different documents and acronyms. So
I know.
thank you, Karen. Um, Another might be a yes, no question as well. But does Ontario have supportive decision-making legislation?
I'm not 100% sure. I know that
Okay.
there is work happening in Ontario to bring a supported decision-making lens to palliative care, to different components. So we have been working with Inclusion Canada to bring that forward. There are a lot of allies within Ontario who are looking to bring that supported decision-making. I would say Ontario is not the leader in this in Canada. It would be more probably British Columbia and maybe, I'm not going to guess something. I know British Columbia is definitely, if you look at Canada, more advanced in that. But we are working with other provinces and leaders in Ontario to try to bring that forward. This focus on supported decision making, while it's been in our framework since the beginning, I would
Yeah.
say it has not gotten the attention or the resourcing that it deserves. And so we've really been leaning into that, and we're hopeful that there's a lot of allies in Ontario to make that happen as well.
Okay, so it sounds promising, like there is
Yes,
some
it
movement. Okay. Thank you for that, Karen. Um, and just as a for those on the webinar, so OCO, just as a reminder, we do have recordings with information on healthcare consent, any legal information, including a webinar that we recently did in September of this year. So just if you wanted to have a look and get more information about consent and some of the other terms that we discussed today, feel free to check that out. Another question for you, Karen. Popular topic. This is very informative. In Ontario, what age can you start making medical decisions? Do you
For
know?
yourself, I believe
Um,
it's, or
I
for,
would imagine it's for I'm not clear, but maybe it's for the care recipient, I would
yeah,
imagine.
so I believe it's 18 years old to be a decision maker.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I can get back to you on that one. It could be
For
16
sure.
in certain circumstances. I
Okay.
know, sorry, because I have all the provinces sticking in my head, I should have reviewed
Right.
that one first. I believe it's 18.
Okay. No problem. And we'll see if there's any clarification, we'll make a note of that for sure. Um, okay, and then we have some another question, rapid fire here, Karen.
Perfect,
Um,
love it.
so how do you achieve the platinum rule with someone who is nonverbal?
So I would say, look at, depends on your role with them. I think because you're nonverbal, it doesn't mean that you're not able to communicate. So I think it's understanding those communication patterns. What I have learned and seen over the past, like I say, kind of 2.5, 3 years as we've focused on accessibility is that there are often individuals who are able to understand those nonverbal cues. And so the importance is to be there and be present and to advocate to be there with your care recipient when these decisions are being made, right? So that's where kind of similar to, Lindsay and Paula's story, Paula really was the advocate for her sister. Now I know it's different, but
Mhm.
I would say if your care recipient is nonverbal, that doesn't mean that there aren't ways that they are sharing different information. And so being creative and just making sure that their support people are there when these conversations or decisions conversations might not be the right word, when you're trying to communicate, and look at supports, look at what's available to support that process because technology is kind of a really well, it's not emerging, but it can be a very powerful tool if again the resources are there to be able to access it.
Yeah, no, that's a good reminder. I mean, they're exploring other, forms of communication and other ways if there's other, assistance there to help you to ensure that you're getting that kind of communication. Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios, and I think the next question is sort of related to that and something I can relate to in my own caregiving journey. Is, when you have, how do you use this plan with somebody who has Alzheimer's or a form of dementia? I mean, your journey is very unpredictable at times. So how would what kind of recommendations do you have when it comes to ACP and those with dementia or Alzheimer's?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I actually did a presentation last week where a woman had that question as well. She's like, I feel like I've missed the boat. Like I feel like I'm just too late. Um, I would say lean into like your care recipient and even though they're changing they may have moments where they are able to have those conversations with you so I think it's also recognizing that again that capacity can ebb and flow so looking for those opportunities if that's not the case in terms of where their care recipient might be in their illness trajectory anchor themselves, try as much as possible to anchor themselves in what they already know about their care recipient, right? Try even just to pause, even just to be like, okay, this is what I want right now because it would make sense to me. Just pause for a moment and be like,
Mhm.
do I think? Just that's why I'm like saying, you have to be gentle with yourself. You have to be kind with yourself. We have not all had the luxury of being able to do this. We have not all had the luxury of learning about what this is, of having the time to have these conversations. So really think about just doing your best and pausing in that platinum rule just to say, is this what I want or is this what I think they would really want? And that may be the best that you can do. But just that pause, just that intentionality of this is their decision. What would they have wanted? As best as I know, based on who they were as a person, their values, their wishes, their beliefs. Did they like to spend a lot of time outside? Did they like to move their body a lot? Did they like music or art? How will these decisions impact their ability to participate in those types of activities? So, again, if you anchor it in those values, wishes, and beliefs of your care recipient, you're more likely to be leaning into that platinum rule as opposed to your own.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful, Karen. I mean, personally, and hopefully for others on the line there, because you're right. I mean, they are beneath it all. They still have, the person that you know and love, and outside of the illness. And so you reflect on what they would really hope for. I guess that leads me to, kind of a question, a general question is that, how often should you review the ACP document? I mean, recognizing all the different ebbs and flows and unpredictable nature of things that are to come.
I think what we hear is some people do it annually, some people do it kind of every 5 years. I think if you do it annually, and annually doesn't need to be a big thing. It could just be playing that game once a year at a family reunion or on your birthday or different things like that. We try to ask people to consider it every year because a lot can happen in a year. The other kind of time I would say, if you're not really sure if you're going, I would say when there's key milestones, when there's changes. So if
Yeah,
you are starting a new job, if there's a new child, if there's a move in location, if there's a new health diagnosis. So you could do it by kind of annual, or you could do it by kind of these changes. Somebody gets married, somebody gets divorced, somebody like all those things are good little triggers where you're already starting to kind of think about, oh, what's the impact on our finances? What's the impact on our support network? What's the impact on the availability of services in this new community that I've moved to? So we've seen two approaches. Some people prefer a calendar and they're just like, no, I like it every year or every 2 years. Others, they're like, yeah, but then if I miss the boat, so some do both. Some kind of have that reminder in their calendar, and others are kind of training themselves to think about it again in that life planning model. So
right.
another way to look at it is how often are you looking at your financial plan? How often are you doing a budget? If you do a budget every year and you refresh it every year, or when you do your taxes, maybe pull out the advanced care plan and have that conversation along the same time.
Yeah, good advice. And then it becomes more regular and then maybe a bit more comfortable to sort of have those discussions too, right, Karen?
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question and then we'll wrap things up. So the question, and I think what I'm getting from the question is, where can you find information around substitute decision making for medical decision making across Canada? I think I got that right from the participant. Yeah.
Um, I go to Inclusion Canada. We actually worked with Inclusion Canada to develop. It's a guide for healthcare providers, but I think it's helpful for anyone who's trying to understand like what is this thing? How does it work? What is our legal responsibility as a country to be able to provide this to citizens? So we do have a resource that kind of provides that overview. I lean into Inclusion Canada. Local community living associations are also a really great place and resource. So those are the two that come to mind, but I can certainly think about others that might apply and share those for distribution
Oh,
after.
that's great. And I think I'll squeeze in one more really quickly
Yeah.
because it was a good question. And so, when you're thinking about caregivers out there who might be challenged to have the conversations, I mean, are there people out there who can facilitate or who are consulting in these matters that can make it, maybe easier to broach this topic?
Yes, so there are many free community workshops. So if you follow Advanced Care Planning Canada on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, you'll see some of those. Hospice Palliative Care Ontario, they have a wonderful network of volunteers who will sometimes do workshops.
Okay.
There are some consultants who will support you in this one-on-one. They are not free, but there are certainly community resources to get kind of those workshops or sessions or one-on-one support. Hospice Palliative Care Ontario is a great place. Local hospices will also do that. So there's a Hospice Waterloo Wellington. They're superstars in all things advanced care planning. And even though people go, oh, but it's not about death and dying. No, it's not. But they're really good at facilitating really what can be sometimes challenging conversations. So I guess I would say look into the hospice palliative care space because we have been talking about advanced care planning for years. You may find that in your local hospice, maybe it's still anchored very much in end of life planning, just because this is, more recent shift to kind of shift it upstream. But there are a lot that are out there doing these free workshops, and you can get them in person, you can get them online. So yes, absolutely.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Karen. And thank you to everyone today for joining. And again, this is incredibly helpful information and resources will come for sure. And for more information on OCO's programs and services, visit our website, follow us on social media, or subscribe to our newsletter. And thank you once again, everyone. Have a wonderful day. And thank you again, Karen. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.